Part of the IOM radio network.
IPMNation.com.
Tonight on Unleashed, there's a petition being signed to get rid of our current knuckle-dragging DEA chief, and I think it's great. He definitely has to go. We'll explore that a little bit, and I'll tell you what he said if you didn't already hear it. And why is it that in politics, everyone makes promises that they either can't keep or know that they absolutely shouldn't keep, and yet we keep electing these clowns? We'll get into that a little bit, too. It's Thursday, November 12th, 2015, just after 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
Auto sequence starts. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday evening here on Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we are live. We are live on OTR FM on the IOM radio network, and, of course, also on IPM Nation. On our live station, IPM Nation 1. I want to thank everybody who tuned in Tuesday night, a historic broadcast. And I won't, I know I talked about this a lot the other night. I won't belabor the point, but once again, I do want to mention that was the very first broadcast, our Tuesday night show, on the new OTR FM on the IOM radio network. OTR FM, the new premium channel on OMTimes radio. So we were chosen, this show was chosen, and this host was chosen to be the very first live broadcast on the new premium channel, OTR FM. So very excited about that. I got a lot of positive feedback about the show, and I knew, that I was told important people would be listening because it was a big deal for OMTimes, and I got some great feedback. So thank you all for listening and continuing to support the show. And also thank you to my great guest. We had Daryl W. Perry on the show Tuesday night. He is, for those who didn't hear it, please go back and listen. Of course, OMTimes does archive all the shows on their website, and we also archived that on IPM Nation as well. In fact, if you go to IPMNation.com/MCU Live, there's an MP3 of the show that you can download and listen to or stream at your leisure. You don't even have to download it. You can just stream it within the website. But so Daryl is a Libertarian candidate for president. He's also the host of a show called Peace, Love, Liberty, which we just picked up on IPM Nation. We're actually now airing that every new episode every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1. So, and he's also a frequent contributor on Free Talk Live, and that's a nationally syndicated show, which we do carry on IPM Nation. And, of course, he has FPP Radio, and a lot of great content there at fppradio.com. So we had a great conversation. And I got to say, too, the guy just has a really cool voice. So I just love listening to Daryl talk and the newscasts that he does and all that. So we had a great conversation. So thank you to him, and thank you again to everybody who listened. Again, our very first live show on OTR FM, the new OTR FM, and of course we continue to be on IPM Nation as well, which is my home base, and we do the show from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire. And the wet and dreary Manchester, New Hampshire. For those of you in the Northeast, or specifically in the area that I'm in, it's been a very rainy day. It definitely affects me. the weather tends to, I don't know, when it's rainy and dreary out, I tend to get tired more easily and just feel kind of bleh. But, I got some caffeine in me and ready for the show. So let's see, what have we got? I want to talk about, I hadn't really planned on getting into this, but the chief of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, I posted something on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page the other day about this. He said something pretty ignorant. It's but before we get into that, I mean, I'll preface comments by saying that it's pretty rare in this day and age to find people who oppose the use of cannabis to the point that they actually even oppose medical marijuana. Now, there are still some people who are so opposed to it that they do oppose even medical marijuana. Not too many, I think, statistically. Actually, I mean, according to statistics that I've seen, a majority of Americans now want to fully legalize, not just decriminalize, but actually legalize marijuana or cannabis. But then you've still got these people who are so entrenched in this completely false, disproven, debunked notion that marijuana is bad in every circumstance, in every situation, and has no redeeming quality whatsoever. This plant that grows in nature, cannabis. That it has no positive application, and the government must stop you from using it. And the government must put you in prison if you're caught using it or growing it, or even if you're using it for medicinal purposes. There are still people who believe that. It's unfortunate because it's, I try to respect people's beliefs and viewpoints, but that, there's just no basis in fact for the belief that you can't ever and should never, ever, ever, ever use it for anything. And what I've always said to anyone who truly believes that even for medical purposes, medical marijuana should not be used is, I challenge anyone listening who believes this. I challenge you. I mean, I think I like to think anyway, I have an intelligent audience that wouldn't buy into that crap. But if you do believe that even medical marijuana should not be permitted, I would challenge you. This is my personal challenge to you. Find someone, and most of us know somebody who falls into this category, but find someone who is suffering from a debilitating illness or condition, or perhaps even a terminal illness. Perhaps they have terminal cancer or something, but find someone who needs this to feel better, who needs access to the use of cannabis to feel better, to ease their pain, to ease their suffering, perhaps even, if you believe some of the research and data, perhaps even to heal them. But at the very least, someone who needs this to help them with their suffering, ease their suffering, their pain, their torment. Find someone who falls into that category and look that person in the face and explain to that individual who is suffering, who is in terrible pain and torment and just wants some relief from it, explain to that individual why you and the government know best and why they must not have access. They simply must not be permitted access to that very thing that can help them feel better, because you and the federal government and the DEA and all these bureaucrats and these morons that we elect who continue to fight against this, explain to that individual who is suffering why you all know what's best, and they must not be permitted to have this. And by the way, I would add, if you are capable, if you truly feel that way and you are capable of looking a person in the face who is suffering in that way, if you are capable of looking them in the face and explaining to them why they must not be permitted to have this because you and everyone else knows best, then I dare assert that you are a sociopath. Because it would take a sociopath to do that. I truly believe, again, no offense to anyone who still clings to this antiquated notion that even medical marijuana must not be permitted. If you take that position, then you are a sociopath because you obviously have no concern or empathy or sympathy for anyone who is suffering, who can benefit from, again, something that grows in nature. But for some reason, you have convinced yourself that they must not have it. And the current chief of the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, said something pretty horrific in regard to this last week. Apparently, he is himself a knuckle dragger who clings to this idea that even medical marijuana is bad. And I kind of thought that story would sort of fall by the wayside. Obviously people are outraged about it, but, well, there is a petition to get rid of this guy, to force him to resign. Or who knows, maybe Obama would even ask for his resignation, although I wouldn't hold my breath on that. But there is a movement underway, so we'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we come back. More Unleashed coming up.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Wealth Update.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on the new OTR FM, on the OMTimes radio network and, of course, IPM Nation. And if I sound a little distracted, I apologize. I was just trying to here it is. I wanted to talk about that article. So this just showed up on HuffPost right before I went on the air. I saw this. Thousands demand firing of DEA chief after he calls medical marijuana a joke. President Obama should fire Chuck Rosenberg and appoint a new DEA administrator who will respect science, medicine, patients, and voters. That is a quote from the petition. And this was written by Molly Riley, deputy politics editor at HuffPost. It says here, a petition calling for President Barack Obama to fire acting Drug Enforcement Administration Chief Chuck Rosenberg over his remarks on medical marijuana had gathered over 28,000 signatures by Thursday afternoon. Rosenberg, a former FBI official who was tapped to lead the DEA in May, has come under fire for denying that smoking marijuana can help some medical conditions. Rosenberg told reporters last week, quote, "What really bothers me is the notion that marijuana is also medicinal, because it's not. We can have an intellectually honest debate about whether we should legalize something that is bad and dangerous, but don't call it medicine. That is a joke. There are pieces of marijuana, extracts or constituents or component parts that have great promise. But if you talk about smoking the leaf of marijuana, which is what people are talking about when they talk about medicinal marijuana, it has never been shown to be safe or effective as medicine," unquote. Pro-legalization group Marijuana Majority launched the Change.org petition last Friday, calling Rosenberg's comments highly offensive. The petition reads, quote, "President Obama should fire Chuck Rosenberg and appoint a new DEA administrator who will respect science, medicine, patients, and voters," unquote. As of Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern, 28,343 individuals had signed it, including musician and breast cancer survivor Melissa Etheridge. Said Tom Angle, the chairman of Marijuana Majority, quote, "My mom uses medical marijuana to find some relief when the pain in her legs caused by multiple sclerosis becomes too much to bear. So this medicine is no joke to my family or to the millions of other families who have seen the benefits of doctor-recommended cannabis for themselves. And numerous scientific studies back up these experiences and data. It's unacceptable for the Obama administration's top drug official to be so ignorant of what science says about drugs," unquote. I completely agree. In a Thursday statement, the DEA defended Rosenberg's remarks. Of course, quote, "To clarify, acting Administrator Rosenberg indicated that marijuana should be subject to the same levels of approval and scrutiny as any other substance intended for use as a medicine. DEA supports efforts to research potential medical uses of marijuana. To this end, DEA has never denied a registration request from anyone conducting marijuana research using FDA-approved protocols. Acting Administrator Rosenberg was also clear to point out there are a number of marijuana components and or extracts which appear to show promise as medicines but have not yet been approved as safe and effective." His comments reflected the fact that FDA has not approved any medical uses for smoked marijuana, unquote. Well, one of the obvious problems with that statement is that's not what he said. What he basically said is that there is no medicinal use for marijuana. To suggest that there is a joke in terms of smoking it. And, the statement is, I get they're trying to spin it, but there's spin, and then there's just taking something and twisting it blatantly into something it was not. They're trying to make it sound like, oh, yeah, no, he's not saying that it's bad. He's just saying that, there needs to be more. Well, there's always this thing about, we have to do more research. We have to do more research before we can decide that it's okay for you to do this because we're the government and we must research this. Rosenberg's remarks run contrary to studies that have shown. See, and this is important because he's just flat wrong. Rosenberg's remarks run contrary to studies that have shown smoked cannabis is safe and effective for medical use, including in treating chronic pain associated with HIV-related neuropathy and helping control spasticity in multiple sclerosis patients. Research has also shown, I'm not sure how to say this, cannabidiol, a non-psychoactive compound extracted from marijuana plants, can help treat children suffering from severe epilepsy. However, the comments do line up with the DEA's official stance on marijuana. The agency considers cannabis a Schedule I drug, the most dangerous of 5 substance categories in the Controlled Substances Act. Schedule I drugs, which also include heroin, LSD, and ecstasy, have no currently accepted medical use, according to federal classification. Last week, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton called for marijuana to be reclassified as a less dangerous substance, which would allow federally funded research on cannabis's medical properties. Hillary Clinton suggesting something helpful. We'll savor that for half a second. That's good. Medical pot got another boost Wednesday when New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed 2 bills allowing patients with serious medical need to gain access to the drug before a statewide program goes into effect next year. Cuomo said in a statement, quote, "I deeply sympathize with New Yorkers suffering from serious illness, and I appreciate that medical marijuana may alleviate their chronic pain and debilitating symptoms," unquote. Medical marijuana is legal in 23 states and the District of Columbia, while an additional 17 states have approved the use of cannabidiol. Cannabidiol. I think that's it, cannabidiol. I'm pretty good at sounding things out. Okay, so, this guy, he's got to go. I mean, to suggest again. I understand he didn't walk up to someone suffering and laugh in their face, but, to even use the word joke in the same sentence as, speaking about when people are suffering in regard to something that clearly is helpful, it's he's just your typical sociopathic government bureaucrat, and it's, again, I'm not a Hillary supporter, but I give her credit for suggesting that, not that it's a radical idea, yet for some reason it would be a radical change for the government to actually fix this, but to move cannabis or marijuana from being a Schedule I drug. I mean, that in and of itself is just bizarre. I mean, it's all bizarre to me in the sense that, I believe it should be fully legal, not just criminalized. I think we should just legalize it, and for a variety of reasons, which are too much to get into right now before we run up against the next break. But, I'll tell you one thing I'm encouraged by. Apparently and I didn't realize this, he's the acting administrator. So I guess this guy is just in this gig temporarily. So maybe hopefully they don't give him the job permanently, although, when a government bureaucrat that no one has ever even heard of, I mean, I didn't know who Chuck Rosenberg was before this. How many of us bother to know the name of the DEA chief? So when some government bureaucrat that no one's ever heard of has a petition with over 28,000 names on it now, demanding that he be kicked out of his gig, that's significant, and hopefully that does put some pressure on. Well, I mean, I don't know. They probably won't bother to ask for his resignation, but hopefully they don't give him the job permanently either if he is the acting administrator. But we'll see. Well, I'll keep you posted on that. I'll keep you updated. Again, this isn't like if I hadn't found the story online, I wouldn't have even known about it. You're not gonna hear about this on most mainstream news programs, certainly. But we are up against another break in just a moment. So what I want to do when we come back is talk about I've been saying now literally for years, I've been talking about how the Republican Party, in terms of how they deal with Obamacare and the rhetoric they use, they must dump this ridiculous repeal and replace mantra and move toward reform, focus on reforming the parts of it that don't work, but stop this repeal and replace nonsense. And there's a couple of different reasons why that's important. And very, very, very gradually, there's been some movement. We had on the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed a while back, Jen and I talked with Congressman Frank Ginta, who agreed and is when he campaigned for re-election the last time around, he said that he wasn't really interested so much in repeal and replace as he was in reforming the existing parts of the law that don't work, which is, the smart play. Repeal and replace is never going to happen, and Republicans need to focus on reform. And there are multiple reasons why they are better off in the long run politically if they dump the repeal and replace rhetoric, which is really all it is, because I don't think they really want to repeal and replace it. I think that secretly, while they can't say it publicly, I think they would prefer not to be successful at repealing it, because that's going to create a bigger problem for them than it could possibly solve. And they know the smart thing in the long run is just work on reform what doesn't work about it. And we will get into that a little bit deeper, and some encouraging signs that some of them might be finally starting to get it. More of them might be starting to get it. But we'll see. We'll get into that a little bit more when we come back. More Unleashed coming up. Don't go away. We are live.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. So good to have you with me here on this Thursday evening on OTR FM, the new premium channel on the OMTimes Radio Network, as I adjust some buttons and turn some knobs here. And, of course, on IPM Nation Live Station Channel 1. And so before the break, I was discussing Obamacare. And, longtime listeners have heard me say on the show a million times how I used to laugh out loud during the 2012 presidential campaign when Mitt Romney would, one of the few things that he seemed to be really passionate about when speaking, he would pound that podium with his fist and talk about, on day one, I will repeal and replace Obamacare. And I would say, well, or at least I would think to myself, well, with what? Nobody seems to have any idea with what. They talk about wanting to get rid of it. And this has dragged on for years now, this repeal and replace mantra. I don't know, the House of Representatives under Boehner, I think, voted over 60 times in this grand symbolic gesture that had no chance of actually accomplishing anything to repeal and replace Obamacare. Just silliness. Do something productive if you know you don't have the votes, but they got to look like they're doing something, and it makes for good rhetoric. And like I said, I've been saying all along that's the wrong play. And here's why. Number one, only the most gullible voters would believe you. Those of you who say, we're going to repeal and replace this. No one believes it. Certainly at this point, no one believes it. So you just look disingenuous. We all know you have nothing to replace it with. So the practical, pragmatic thing to do is reform. But here's another reason. So the business community, of course, gets very nervous when there's any sort of major change coming. Now, the business community, of course, no great fan of Obamacare, certainly. Because, more government regulations, more bureaucracy, all of that is bad for business, and nobody likes that. But what the business community also doesn't tend to like is even more upheaval on top of the previous upheaval. Okay, so we had the upheaval that came with implementing Obamacare, and I saw it firsthand myself. I used to work for a company where, I left that job a couple years ago now, and I used to have people working under me who were part timers who had to have their hours cut because according to the new restrictions under the Affordable Care Act, they had to be under a certain threshold as far as hours, or they would be considered full-time and available for healthcare. And, it caused some issues. Now, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we did not need and still need to a large degree healthcare reform in this country. We absolutely do. I just would have preferred something more market-based, more free market-based. To me, from my perspective, the great frustration and somewhat of an irony of healthcare reform in this country is that I would have preferred a more Republican style version of healthcare reform that was free market based without with less government regulation and intervention, not more. But that version of healthcare reform was never going to happen because nationally, Republicans tended to not be that interested in healthcare reform, typically in the macro, unless they were pushing back against something like Obamacare or Hillary Care, what she tried to do when she was first lady. So that version of healthcare reform is a pipe dream. So instead, we end up with something like Obamacare. So I blame both parties for this. But I don't think the business community really wants more upheaval on top of the previous upheaval. So now that Obamacare has been phased in, I don't think they necessarily want Republicans saying, well, okay, now that we've done this and yeah, you didn't like it, but now that we've completely phased this in, now we're going to turn around and we're going to pull the rug out from you again. And we supposedly are going to replace it with something, even though you all know that we're full of crap and we're not really going to replace it with anything. We're just going to repeal it. And then we're going to go back to not caring. So I don't believe, not only do I not believe that they have anything to replace it with, because we all know they don't, but I also don't believe that a lot of these Republicans necessarily mean what they say. I know, imagine that, politicians not meaning what they say. When they talk about repealing it because it creates a political conundrum for them. It's kind of like it. I'll make an analogy here. It's kind of like the marriage equality thing. As much as Republicans many of them, not all of them, but many of them would rail against the idea of letting gay people get married. I guarantee you there were many politicians on the right who were secretly, they can't say it publicly, but they were secretly relieved when the Supreme Court put an end to the debate and now it's settled law, because now they don't have to deal with it anymore. And I guarantee you there are Republicans in Congress who, while they will continue to carry the repeal and replace mantra, they are secretly hoping that it never comes to that because it is going to create a larger political problem for them. And I saw this popped up on HuffPost. Republicans realize taking Obamacare away from their voters maybe isn't a great idea. Republicans have lots of reasons to repeal Obamacare and millions more not to. And this Jeffrey Young wrote this for HuffPost, so I'll read this quickly. Republicans have enjoyed big electoral wins over the past year that put them on the verge of being able to do a major damage to Obamacare. Only now, some of them seem a little anxious about taking the next big step. It's a truism in politics, espoused by Republicans and Democrats alike, that it's awfully hard to take away government benefits once they've been offered. In the case of the Affordable Care Act, repeal would mean yanking health coverage from more than 16 million people who didn't have it before, between those who now get subsidies for private health insurance and those who gained access to Medicaid coverage via the law's expansion of the program to more low-income adults. It's the Medicaid expansion that now appears to be complicating the ceaseless, noisy, and heretofore ineffective repeal Obamacare movement. The House has voted dozens of times to get rid of Obamacare, or at least cripple it, since 2011. But the Senate has been in GOP hands for almost a year, and a repeal bill is still on a winding path through the sluggish upper chamber. It may eventually wind up on President Barack Obama's desk, finally giving congressional Republicans the veto they've so long craved. But wait, new obstacles have appeared in the form of Republican senators who aren't so sure they want their names associated with an effort to magically transform millions of their constituents from insured people to uninsured people. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican of West Virginia, said this, as reported by The Hill's Alexander Bolton, quote, "I'm very concerned about the 160,000 people who had Medicaid expansion in my state. I have difficulty with that being included," unquote. And here's what Montana's freshman Republican senator, who succeeded Democrat Max Baucus, the chief author of the health law, had to say, quote, "I respect the decision of our legislature and our government on Medicaid expansion, but I'm one who respects their rights and voices," unquote. That was Senator Steve Daines, Republican of Montana. And a mystery senator summed up the whole problem for the GOP leadership, The Hill reported. Another Senate Republican, speaking on condition of anonymity, expressed concern that states that expanded Medicaid would be penalized by billions of dollars if Congress repealed the federal assistance. Quote, "Repealing the Medicaid expansion is not going to be in there because it's too problematic for many Republicans. I don't want to stick the state with the bill," unquote. There's a little bit more to this article if you want to read the whole thing. It is up at HuffPost. There's you've also got the math of the political calculation here, and this will, for a lot of these Republicans, I understand, depend on what state they're in. So there are a lot of voters who will tell you, and there's no shortage of these stories. There are people who clearly have benefited from the Affordable Care Act, but there's also people who have been hurt by it. And so I guess depending on what state you're in, who your constituents are in your state, you have to kind of weigh that out, because it varies in different states. In some states, the implementation of the Affordable Care Act seems to have gone well, and people are happy with it. In other states, however, it seems to have been a disaster, and people are very unhappy with it. And I know with this show, we have listeners across the country, but I can tell you that in my home state of New Hampshire, there is a lot of unhappiness with the Affordable Care Act for reasons that are too numerous and complex to get into here. But, in my state, I think the consensus is that it has not been a good thing. But I know that there's other places where, it's gone okay if you can get past the fact that now the government and the bureaucracy is more involved in the healthcare system than ever. But there are individual cases where the Affordable Care Act has been a good thing for some individuals and families who maybe couldn't get healthcare before who have it now. So again, for each of these individual senators and congressmen, they got to kind of figure that out. But again, the bigger picture in the macro is they have got to move beyond repeal and replace and focus on reform. Reform Obamacare needs to be their new mantra. Look, between repeal and replace and, kicking out undocumented immigrants and building a wall, they're not doing themselves any favors. And, and they make promises that they know they can't keep. Both the left and right do this. You've got Trump talking about building a wall that is never going to happen. And, you got people like Hillary and Bernie talking about making college free for everybody, which is also pie in the sky and is never going to happen. Everybody makes all kinds of empty promises, and Americans keep voting for them, even though, they're all full of crap. So maybe we'll talk about that a little more when we come back. I'm not actually sure where we're going next, but that's the adventure of it. More Unleashed coming up after the break. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness and action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
There's some ominous sounding bumper music for you. I mean business when you hear that, or something. Welcome back, everybody, as we cruise into our final segment tonight on Matt Connarton Unleashed on this Thursday evening. I was talking about, I made reference to immigration, Trump and his wall and whatnot. The other thing that, is kind of around the neck of the Republican Party, because, I also said that after the 2012, after they lost, after Romney lost in 2012, that, there was a lot of talk about how they needed to find a way to begin to embrace Hispanics, embrace immigrants. And that lasted for 2 weeks, maybe 3. I don't know. And then, of course, we're back to talking about building walls and deporting people. And they can't win back the White House in 2016 without figuring out a way to square. I mean, again, you can certainly win the Republican nomination talking about building walls and deporting people. The conservative base loves that stuff. Anything you can do to really kind of stick it to undocumented immigrants. But that's not going to be helpful in a general election, and especially when you've got to figure in the fastest growing demographic in the United States is Hispanics, and whether you like it or not. Personally, I don't care. I mean, I think the last thing I read was by the year 2040. Whites will be the minority in this country, according to one projection. I personally, it doesn't matter to me. To me, people are people. I don't really care where you're from, but it matters to a lot of people. A lot of people feel like, well, we're losing what America is supposed to be. Really, I thought America was supposed to be the great melting pot. Some people think America is supposed to be a bunch of white people, which is funny because that's not what America was before it was America. It was a bunch of Native American people, and we came and took everything. And now we have some ideas. We have some very different ideas about what America is supposed to be than they had. And now, I guess now we're the oppressed, right? Us white people, we're the ones being oppressed. You hear a lot of that kind of talk, and I think it's silly and stupid. And if you're a white person who feels like you're being oppressed because you when you make a phone call to some sort of automated system and you're given the option of English or Spanish, and you feel that because of that you're being oppressed and you're losing your culture, that you need to figure out a way to have a little bit less free time because your mind is just too fixated on stuff that's not as big a deal as you think it is. It's like I didn't want to waste my time on it, but it's like the people who are mad about the Starbucks cups not having snowflakes or a Christmas tree on them because it's part of the war on Christmas. And the war on Christmas is part of the war on Christianity, and Christians are oppressed. And any day now, we're going to wake up to Sharia law because Christians are being oppressed. I mean, if you're really worried about that, number one, you've been watching too much Fox News. Number two, you find a hobby because you're fixated on stuff that's, come on, kids, let's get it together. Anyway. All right. So, this showed up on HuffPost. Ted Cruz going after Marco Rubio on immigration, and Rubio's fighting back. I haven't pre-read this. Rubio fighting back, though, that's interesting. I have personally, I've labeled Rubio a gutless coward for the way he used to be in favor of a path to citizenship until he realized, oh, wait a minute, if I'm going to run for president and win the Republican nomination, I need to figure out how to, hate immigrants as much as everyone else. But let me read this quickly. Republican presidential candidate and Senator Marco Rubio is increasingly coming under fire from his GOP opponents over immigration reform, something that could make it harder in months to come for him to get away with vague responses about deportations. Rubio has long been a master of talking points on immigration. He supports, quote, enforcing the law and opposes, quote, amnesty. During his bid for the presidency, he's said border security must come first and that he'd end programs that block people from deportation. But his record includes helping draft and push through a 2013 comprehensive immigration reform bill, and fellow candidate and Senator Ted Cruz isn't letting him forget it. Cruz said of Rubio Thursday on the Laura Ingraham show, quote, "My reaction in all of politics is talk is cheap. That you know where someone is based on their action. When politicians say the exact opposite of what they've done in office, and I treat that with a pretty healthy degree of skepticism," unquote. Well, that in itself actually is a fair comment, but Cruz and Senator Rand Paul, another presidential contender, have both ramped up criticism of Rubio over the 2013 Gang of Eight bill, which was drafted by Rubio, 3 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Cruz, who voted against the bill, said at a Wednesday town hall that it rendered Rubio indistinguishable on the issue of immigration from Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton. Cruz said, quote, "That is a path to losing," unquote. Paul, speaking to Ingraham on Thursday, accused Rubio of working with Democrats on the Gang of Eight to keep out conservative measures. Oh, my goodness. In other words, Rubio compromising with those evil Democrats. Quote, "Rubio went along with Chuck Schumer, and there was a secret deal made. They voted on and block against every conservative reform that was brought forward," unquote, said Paul, who also voted against the bill. I wonder what he means by conservative reforms. I would imagine a conservative reform was, by the way, all this is meaningless, and we're just going to go back to deporting people. The dispute is over whether Rubio's more recent veer to the right is genuine and whether he can be trusted, but his words can be interpreted different ways. Democrats can accuse him of flip-flopping. People like Cruz and Paul can make the case that he is too soft on undocumented immigrants because the Senate bill would have allowed many of them to remain in the country and eventually gain citizenship. Oh, my God, how terrible. Practical, pragmatic, moral, ethical, and compassionate, but oh no. But how deportation policy functions is much more complicated than simply enforcing the law versus ignoring it. One of the biggest questions is over presidential discretion or the need for law enforcement officials to prioritize some people over others given limited resources. That principle was the justification for the Obama administration's decision to instruct agents to prioritize recent border crossers, individuals convicted of serious crimes, and national security threats, a move criticized by Republicans. It was also the basis behind the creation of the deferred action programs, which Rubio and other Republicans have vowed to end. There's a bunch more to this article. We're not going to get through the whole thing, but it's up at HuffPost. Ted Cruz goes after Marco Rubio on immigration. Look, you can be as tough as you want to on this issue to try to win that nomination, but I'm telling you, in the general election, whoever the Republican candidate is must try to come across as not looking like a total xenophobe. And by the way, and I know I mentioned it on I know I mentioned it on the show the other night. I want to mention it again here though. Jeb Bush, who I don't support and I don't give much credit to for much of anything, but the one thing I have credited him with is that he has not backed down an inch. As far as I can tell, on this issue. Jeb Bush supports immigration reform, a path to citizenship, and he has not backed down from that, and I say good for him. And, he did something during that last debate. He did something that I thought was very smart. He said, the more we talk about, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember his exact words, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but he said, the more we talk about this issue and the more we come across as wanting to deport everybody, they're high-fiving each other over at the Hillary Clinton campaign because they know what this means for them come election time. And what he really seemed to be saying there, because he couldn't come right out and say it, well, I mean, he probably could have actually, but he'd have to word it carefully. And he's a bit of a klutz rhetorically. So he doesn't want to get too carried away with this, I'm sure. But the message that I got from that was he's basically saying, look, guys, we're going to lose in 2016 if we continue to look like we just want to kick out all the Mexicans. Basically, we're going to blow it. And that's why they love this kind of stuff. And he's right. I guarantee you they do love this kind of talk at the Hillary Clinton campaign. They probably are high-fiving each other watching this debate, listening to Trump talk about building a wall and, any kind of reform, any kind of practical immigration reform is automatically tagged, labeled as amnesty, which it's not. But, that word is, the meaning of that word has been twisted, as so often happens in politics. The Hillary campaign has got to love that kind of stuff. They're giving them so much to use against them in the general election. Every time one of these people opens his mouth or her mouth about, and because don't forget Carly Fiorina's in there, about illegal immigration and wanting to deport people. It's the Hillary campaign's got to love it. You cannot win without the Hispanics in 2016. You just can't. So, and Jeb seems to understand that, and he seemed to indicate as much during the debate the other night. And by the way, when he said what he said, now this was interesting. I would have thought they would have booed him. Typically, if you say anything pro-immigration at a Republican debate, they start to boo you. I didn't hear any boos. He got applause. I mean, people weren't cheering. It wasn't raucous applause, but clearly there were people in that audience who agreed with him, who also get it. I'm sure there's a lot of Republicans who get it, but that not everyone does, and better learn to get it for that general election. We're out of time. Thanks, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're signing off. Good night.